Stood there, eyes fixed on her. "And that guy?" I asked after a beat. "In the pictures." She blinked. "What guy?" "In the message. From the corporate dinner." "Oh, God," she said, rolling her eyes and waving her hand. That's just Marcus. Or Malcolm. I don't even remember. Some guy from the finance side. He was weirdly chatty and clingy all night. The whole thing was so awkward. Clara was making fun of me about it. That's what the message was about. I wanted to believe her. Every part of me wanted to lean into that version of reality, the one where everything had a perfectly reasonable explanation, where I hadn't just stumbled onto something that felt like the beginning of a nightmare. But there was something wrong with the way she said it. Not what she said, the way she said it. The words were right, but the tone was just slightly misaligned. Like she'd rehearsed it. Like she'd been preparing for this exact question and wasn't expecting it yet. Her laugh was too short. Her body language too stiff. The easy charm she usually had in these moments. The way she could talk her way out of anything. Wasn't there. She changed the subject almost immediately. Kissed me lightly on the cheek. Told me I was sweet for bringing dinner. Started rambling about how we should rewatch that stupid cooking competition show she liked. All deflection. But for the rest of the night, her phone never left her hand. She scrolled through it during dinner. She checked it twice during the show, even though she wasn't answering anything. I noticed her thumb hovering over the messages like she was debating deleting something. When I got up to get us dessert, she followed me into the kitchen instead of staying on the couch like she usually did. And later, when I got into bed, she took her phone into the bathroom and stayed in there for over 20 minutes. The thing is, it wasn't what I saw that haunted me. It was how she reacted to me seeing it. Like the mask slipped for a split second, just long enough for me to glimpse something underneath. Something I wasn't supposed to see. I laid in bed that night with her next to me, breathing softly in the dark, and I stared at the ceiling for hours. I didn't say a word. I didn't ask any more questions. But I knew something had changed, that some door had been opened that couldn't be shut again. It wasn't just the message, or the pictures, or even the lie. It was the fact that, for the first time in 5 years, I felt like I was sleeping beside a stranger. That was the first crack. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between her breaths just to remind myself that someone was still in the bed next to me. But it didn't feel like Lindsay anymore. Not entirely. She was curled up, her back to me, one hand tucked beneath her pillow, the other, of course, resting gently on her phone, like she couldn't bear to let it out of reach even in sleep. I must have watched the clock crawl from midnight to sunrise without ever closing my eyes. My mind was a carousel of memories, each one spinning faster than the last, looping back through moments I'd ignored, dismissed, laughed off, or maybe didn't want to see for what they were. You don't realize how many things you've let slide until you start collecting them. And once you start, it's impossible to stop. That night, I became a collector. I remembered the evening jogs she started a few months back. Out of nowhere, Lindsay had never been a runner. In fact, she once joked that if she was running, I should assume a bear was chasing her. But then suddenly 3, sometimes 4 nights a week, she was tying up those bright teal sneakers and heading out to clear her head. I asked if she wanted me to go with her once. She laughed. "It's my alone time," she said. "Helps me reset." At first I thought it was healthy. She was taking care of herself. What kind of partner would I be if I got insecure over exercise? But now I remembered how she always left after dinner. How she always made sure her phone was on full volume. How she came back glowing. Not sweaty, glowing. That little flush in her cheeks I used to think was for me. I thought about the yoga classes she started attending on weekends. Not the ones at the studio near our place. No, she couldn't focus there, she said. Too many kids, too much noise. She started driving to a place across the city. A 40-minute drive both ways, just to stretch with strangers. Sometimes she'd be gone for 3 hours. When I'd ask how class went, she'd give vague answers like, "It was fine," or "harder than last time," and then go shower immediately. Not a word more. And the business trips. God, the business trips. At first, they were quarterly, then bi-monthly. Then it felt like she was out of town more than she was home. Always conferences or team-building offsites. I remember how proud she was the first time she got to lead a regional marketing pitch. I'd surprised her with champagne that night. That was the Lindsay I fell in love with, ambitious, excited, open. But over time, the trips got longer, the explanations shorter. I'd ask who she was traveling with, and she'd rattle off names I barely recognized. New hires, she'd say. Interns. I'm mentoring a few people. Don't worry, it's all work. I didn't worry. Not really. Not then. I trusted her. Now, I couldn't stop thinking about that trip to Denver. The one where her return flight got delayed by 8 hours. She said she'd just stay at the airport lounge. But when I checked the airline site, the flight had landed on time. She blamed a connection error. I believed her. Idiot. And the bathroom calls. How did I not notice it sooner? She started taking her phone into the bathroom a year ago. Said she liked scrolling while she did her skincare routine. Nothing suspicious about that. Then she started answering calls in there. I'd hear the water running, her voice muffled. Just work, she'd say if I asked. There was a period where I'd walk by the bathroom and catch her whispering through the vent. Her laugh didn't sound the same. It was lighter, younger, the kind of laugh she hadn't used with me in months. God, it was right in front of me, and I let it happen. Even during family get-togethers, something had shifted. She used to be warm, affectionate with me in front of my parents, playful with my nieces and nephews. But this past summer at my cousin's wedding, she seemed annoyed by everything. She barely made eye contact, snapped at me over the seating chart, and spent most of the reception scrolling on her phone. But the moment she stepped outside to take a work call, her whole posture changed. I watched her from the glass doors. Her shoulders straightened. She was smiling, radiant, like a switch had flipped. It wasn't just me either. My mom had even mentioned something offhand that night. Is Lindsay okay? She'd asked. She seems distant. I brushed it off. Told her Lindsay was just tired from work. Told myself the same thing. But that night, lying there wide-eyed while she slept inches away, I knew better. I knew I had been blind, willfully blind. And every little oddity, every tiny moment I'd swept under the rug, was now screaming to be acknowledged. There was even that time a few weeks back when her friend Jenna posted a story from a brunch. A group *T of 4 women. Only Lindsay wasn't there. And yet, she told me she was going to brunch with Jenna that very day. I asked her about it and she said she'd left early, before the photo was taken. But her story didn't match the timestamps. I remember feeling a knot in my chest, but I let it go. Why? Because love makes you stupid? Or because I didn't want to admit that the person I knew, or thought I knew, might not be real anymore. I felt like a man standing in a burned-out house, retracing the path of the fire after the flames were already gone. The damage was everywhere, but the spark? That was harder to pinpoint. Until now. Now I had the message. That stupid, gut-wrenching message on her phone. He'll never understand. I just need you to trust me a little longer. I didn't know who he was. Not yet. But I knew who she meant when she said, he'll never understand. Me. And she was right. I didn't understand. I didn't understand how she could smile at me in the mornings and lie with such ease. How she could take my hand at dinner, talk about future plans, and still be orchestrating whatever this was behind my back. She was planning something. I could feel it now like a second heartbeat in the room. There was a rhythm to all of this, and I'd only just started to hear it. I sat on the edge of the bed, my feet on the cold hardwood floor, watching her sleep in the dim light of the hallway that spilled through the cracked door. She looked peaceful, innocent, as if none of this lived in her mind. And I wondered, did she feel guilty? Did she think about what it would do to me if I found out? Did she ever hesitate when she kissed me goodbye? Or had I already become a background character in the new life she was writing for herself? I didn't know. But I knew this. Once you see the cracks, you can't pretend the glass is whole. That night, I started keeping mental notes. Every small detail. Every look, every phone call, every schedule change. I wasn't going to ask her. Not yet. I wasn't going to accuse her or demand explanations. That would tip my hand too early. I needed to know. Not just suspect, no. Because once I knew, once it was no longer just shadows and guesses, I wouldn't be able to come back from it. And neither would she. The next morning, I woke up feeling like my body had been crushed under the weight of someone else's dream. I wasn't even sure I'd slept. I must have drifted off somewhere around dawn, but it didn't feel like rest. More like a timeout from obsessing over everything that didn't make sense anymore. Lindsay was already up. I heard the sound of the shower running, then the blow dryer, then her heels clicking across the floor like nothing had happened. I stayed in bed longer than usual, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, wondering how many more lies would be dressed up in perfume and polite smiles before I snapped. When I finally got up, she was in the kitchen, humming along to a pop song on the radio, dressed sharper than usual for a regular workday. Black blazer, soft curls in her hair, that same delicate necklace she wore when she wanted to feel a little extra polished. A to-go coffee cup was in her hand, and her phone, predictably, was face down beside it. "You look nice," I said flatly, watching her reaction. She blinked like she hadn't expected me to speak, then gave a half-smile. "Thanks. We've got a client presentation this morning." "Where at?" "Downtown. The usual place. Nothing exciting." The way she said it, too casual, like she was over-explaining before I even asked, lit something in me, a flare of awareness. And suddenly I was tired of pretending I was the only one not reading the script. "Need a ride?" I offered. Her reaction was immediate, too immediate. "No," she said, then caught herself. "I mean, I'm carpooling with Megan. She lives on the way." "Right?" I nodded. "Of course." She kissed me on the cheek, told me not to wait up because they had strategy planning later that afternoon. I watched her leave like someone observing a stranger exiting a stage they didn't belong on. As soon as the door shut, I sat down at the table and just stared at her coffee cup for a long minute. Lipstick on the lid. That flawless red she only wore when she wanted attention. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe I just reached the part of the story where denial couldn't carry me anymore. Either way, I walked over to the hall closet and pulled out her gym bag. It wasn't locked. There was no obvious attempt to hide anything, and that, in a way, was worse, because hidden inside the side pocket, beneath a pack of breath mints and a tiny travel-sized deodorant, was a second phone. I didn't even know what I was looking at first. It was older, definitely not the model she used for work or her main number. No case, no lock screen, just black and silver plastic with a few scratches across the back. And the moment I held it in my hands, I knew this was it. This was where the truth lived. I turned it on. It vibrated softly. Plain background. 4 bars of signal. No apps, no photos, no social media. But there were messages. A thread with someone named Carson. I tapped the thread open, and I swear, my knees almost gave out. There were pages of texts, nothing graphic, nothing explicit, but everything damning. Dozens of messages, stretching back over several months. Most were recent, some only a few days old. It was all there. Carson. Can't stop thinking about that weekend. Still feels like a dream. Lindsay. Me too. Wish we had more time like that. Soon, I promise. Carson. Did you talk to him yet? Lindsay. Not yet. Timing isn't right. But I'm working on it. I felt something in my chest twist, like the final bolt in a collapsing bridge. My breath caught, and I scrolled further, needing to see how deep it went. The texts grew more personal. Inside jokes, affectionate nicknames, long discussions about finding an apartment upstate and splitting rent. One message was even a forwarded listing for a small duplex, along with a price breakdown. She responded with a heart emoji. They were planning a life together. While I was still standing beside her, pretending we were okay. She'd already made the exit. She just hadn't told me yet. She was preparing to leave not just me, but everything we had built. And she was doing it with someone I hadn't even known existed until 5 minutes ago. There were no photos, no calls, just this neatly tucked away, surgically clean string of deception. It was as if she'd created a separate world and dropped me off at the border without telling me I wasn't invited anymore. I sat down on the edge of the couch with the phone still in my hand, not knowing whether to scream, cry, or just disappear. Carson. I didn't know a Carson. I'd never heard his name, never seen his face in the stories she told from work or friends. That alone was telling. Lindsay liked to overshare. If this was an old flame, she'd erased him from her personal history with precision. He didn't exist in the curated version of her life she let me see. Except now he did, and I couldn't unsee him. I spent the rest of the day numb, like I was walking around inside someone else's skin. I took the day off work and told my boss I had a stomach bug. That wasn't a lie, just not the kind he thought. My stomach was sick, just not from anything that could be treated with medicine. At one point, I placed the second phone on the kitchen counter and just stared at it. I thought about smashing it, erasing it, waking her up at 2 a.m. to scream in her face. But none of those things would change the facts. She had made her choice. Not just once, over and over again. Every day she texted him. Every plan they made. Every time she sat across from me and smiled, she was choosing him instead. It wasn't just betrayal. It was betrayal with intent. That's what hit the hardest. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't some one-night mistake or messy drunken lapse. It was organized, sustained, maintained, hidden so thoroughly that I had almost applauded her discipline. Like watching a magician perform a trick I couldn't figure out until the moment he handed me the instructions. By the time Lindsay got home that night, I had already returned the second phone to her bag, right where I found it. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. She walked through the door carrying a bouquet of white lilies. My favorite, not hers. She smiled when she saw me on the couch. "Hey," she said brightly, like nothing was wrong. "You feeling okay? I brought you something." She walked over and kissed me. Quick, soft, nothing in asterisk mate. I said thank you, told her I was tired. She sat beside me and talked about her day, and I nodded along like I was still the same man from yesterday. But I wasn't, because now I knew the truth. And knowing, really knowing, changes everything. It's strange how fast you can go from feeling like a fool to feeling like a detective. The day after I found the second phone, I didn't fall apart like I expected. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't even tell anyone. I just observed, quietly, methodically, like I was studying something dangerous behind glass. Lindsay, in her usual routine, gave no indication that anything had changed. But for me, everything had. I had proof now. Hard, irrefutable evidence. And yet I still needed more. Not because I doubted what I saw, but because something about it didn't make sense. The messages with Carson were too neat, too careful. There was affection, yes. Plans, yes. But not a single slip. No risk. No emotional chaos. Just strategy. It didn't feel like an affair. It felt like a blueprint. That's when the idea hit me. Maybe this wasn't new. Maybe Carson wasn't the first. Maybe this wasn't some out-of-character lapse. Maybe I wasn't the exception, but the pattern. A repeat episode. Another chapter in a story that had been written long before I ever showed up in her life. So I started digging. I began with the obvious, her old social media accounts. Most of them were locked down or wiped clean. Her Facebook hadn't been updated in over a year. Her Instagram was curated to perfection. Scenic coffee shops. Beach **TS. Cute, candid selfies of us from vacations that now made me physically ill to look at. But then I remembered something from early on in our relationship. One night, after a few drinks, she had mentioned an ex. A guy named Ryan, I think. She'd brushed it off at the time. Said he was obsessive, clingy, a walking red flag she'd ignored for too long. She told me he didn't matter. Just a mistake. That's all she said. But I remembered her tone. A little too defensive. Like she wasn't mad at him. She was mad the subject had even come up. I didn't have a last name, but I remembered the company. A boutique branding firm she used to work for before she moved over to her current job. I searched the company on LinkedIn, clicked through the old employee list, and there he was. Ryan Bennett, creative director, mutual connections, still in the city. I stared at his photo for a long time, wondering, hesitating. Part of me thought I was crossing a line by reaching out. But then again, hadn't she already blown every line to hell? So I sent him a message. Hi Ryan. I know this is out of nowhere, but I think we need to talk. It's about Lindsay. He replied within 15 minutes. Yeah, I figured this day would come eventually. That sentence stopped me cold. We agreed to meet that evening at a bar downtown. Somewhere neutral, crowded enough to keep things civil. I didn't know what I expected to hear. Maybe something bitter, maybe a petty ex-boyfriend with an axe to grind. But when I walked in and saw him at the back table, nursing a whiskey and looking like he hadn't slept in weeks, I knew this was going to be worse than anything I imagined. You're Michael? He asked as I approached. She still uses that name for you? That hit me harder than I care to admit. I sat down, nodded, and let him talk. He didn't waste time. She did it to me too, he said. You're not crazy. I didn't even know what question I had asked. But apparently that was the answer. What did she do? I asked cautiously. He took a slow sip of his drink. Everything. The double life. The gaslighting. The slow, strategic dismantling of everything I had. I sat there in silence while he laid it all out. They'd been together for just under 2 years. Started as co-workers, got serious fast. Moved in together within 6 months. Ryan said she was magnetic, fun, focused, endlessly supportive. First. But then came the same shifts I'd started seeing. Sudden work trips, gym classes on the other side of town, that ever-present phone always just out of reach. I didn't suspect anything for the longest time, he said. She had an explanation for everything, and I wanted to believe her. You know how she is, when she looks at you, it's like you're the only person in the world. I did know, or I thought I had. Eventually, he'd found a credit card charge, a deposit on an apartment he didn't know about. When he confronted her, she denied everything, called him controlling, said he was insecure. That's when he checked her laptop. What he found still made his voice shake. She was draining my business account, he said quietly. Little transfers, just small enough to avoid notice. She said it was temporary, that she'd pay it back. But when I tried to lock the account, she flipped. She left him the next day, disappeared with a fake smile and a box of his things still unpacked in the hallway. He never got the money back, never got closure. She blocked him on everything and vanished. Until now, he said. When I saw your message, I knew. He looked up at me then. You're not the first, man, and you won't be the last. I sat there stunned. Everything he described, the charm, the secrecy, the slow separation from reality, it was exactly what I'd been experiencing. Word for word, like she had a playbook. Did she ever mention someone named Carson? I asked. Ryan paused. No, but there was a Greg. And before me, there was apparently a Sam, guy she'd met on some project. I don't even think she uses her real name anymore. That thought hit like a brick to the chest. Was Lindsay even her name? What else had she crafted? What else had I taken at face value because she said it with conviction? We talked for over an hour. Ryan showed me a few old emails, receipts from the account transfers, and the part that made me nauseous, a list of job offers he later found out she'd used his name to reference herself for. She used me to launch her next step, he said. And once she was done, she moved on like I never existed. I left the bar in a haze. The city felt different. The lights harsher. The people more distant. I walked for blocks, trying to make sense of everything. But all I could hear was Ryan's voice echoing. She doesn't fall in love. She recruits. I got home just after 9. Lindsay was already there, curled up on the couch, glass of wine in hand, watching something mindless on TV. She looked up and smiled as if nothing in the universe was out of place. Hey, you okay? She asked. You look tired. I nodded and said something about a long day. She patted the seat beside her. I sat. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. I needed to see her from the other side of this new knowledge. And when I looked at her, really looked at her, I didn't see my fiancée anymore. I saw the cycle, the script, The same lines recycled for a new audience. A carefully constructed illusion wearing the skin of someone I thought I loved. She laughed at something on the screen and leaned her head on my shoulder. I didn't move. But in that moment, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. She wasn't going to leave me on her terms. This time, I was going to be the one writing the ending. The next morning, I woke up before Lindsay. I lay there watching the shadows move across the ceiling, trying to find even the smallest trace of the man I used to be. Couldn't. Something had fractured in me the moment Ryan said, "You won't be the last." It echoed in my mind like a dare, not a threat, but a statement of certainty. And I realized I was standing at a crossroads. I could let this ruin me the way it had ruined him, or I could do what Lindsay never expected. Stay silent, stay still, and win. So I chose silence. That day was the start of my quiet exit. Not a dramatic breakup, not a confrontation. Not yet. Lindsay thought she had time, that she could stretch this out, manage me, finish whatever elaborate transition she was working on behind my back. She was wrong. I began with the money. We shared 2 joint accounts, one for bills and groceries, and one we called the future fund. It was where we stashed what we didn't touch. Savings for a house, for a honeymoon, maybe for a kid someday. It had taken years to build, and up until a few weeks ago, I still believed we'd use it together. That morning, I called the bank from the office parking lot. I asked about transferring my portion into a private account under my name. I said we were separating finances temporarily for budgeting. The banker didn't ask questions. I moved every cent I had contributed. I didn't touch hers. I wanted her to know it wasn't petty when she found out. It was calculated. Then I started calling attorneys. It felt surreal, scrolling through firm websites while pretending to take notes for a conference call. Each lawyer I spoke to had the same calm, detached tone. I must have sounded the same, professional, unshaken, like I was discussing someone else's life. One woman, after I'd laid out the basics, paused and asked gently, "Are you safe?" I laughed. Couldn't help it. She didn't mean physically. She meant mentally, emotionally. I told her yes. That's what made this so dangerous. I was completely calm. By the end of the week, I had legal representation, new account passwords, 2 safes installed. One in the guest closet, one in the garage, and had started discreetly moving valuables, heirlooms, documents. Nothing obvious. I made sure the safe in the closet only held decoys. The real one, the one in the garage behind a panel in the workbench, held everything important. I scanned every document we shared. The lease, car titles, insurance, bank statements. I copied her ID, her work schedule, and even took photos of her second phone one night while she was in the shower. Just in case. I didn't know what I'd need, but I wasn't going to be caught unprepared. Every evening I came home and smiled. We ate dinner, watched shows. She vented about her boss. I kissed her forehead and nodded and played the part so perfectly that even I almost believed it sometimes. But under the surface, I was watching everything, studying her. Lindsay had patterns. She always had. She rotated her lies like outfits. Yoga nights, wine nights, Megan's going through a rough time nights. I cataloged them all. If she said she was with Megan, I checked Megan's socials. If she said work was running late, I called the office number. Not to speak to anyone, just to confirm she wasn't there. The little things. It became second nature. An obsession. At night, I'd lay awake replaying every sentence, every shift in tone. I noticed how she kept her phone in the bathroom drawer now instead of on the counter. How she had started checking the front door lock multiple times before bed. As if she sensed something, some subtle shift in energy she couldn't name. One night, she turned to me in the dark and said, "You've been quiet lately." I smiled. Just tired. She didn't press. She never did when the answer was clean. That was her weakness. She only knew how to control chaos, not silence. A week later, I met with the lawyer in person. I handed over everything I had gathered. Bank statements, **TS of the texts with Carson, a timeline of inconsistencies, photos of the second phone. I had highlighted her fake business trips, flagged suspicious withdrawals, and noted the date of every unexplained overnight absence. My attorney, A sharp, quietly intense man named Calloway. Took it all without a blink. "You've done your homework," he said, flipping through the stack. "She's not the kind of person you confront unprepared," I told him. He nodded. "We'll draw up the paperwork. You'll be protected." That was all I needed to hear. By the end of the week, we had ironclad agreements. A financial freeze on joint accounts, a clause to prevent asset seizure, and a separation notice ready to go the moment I gave the word. He even advised me to install surveillance in the apartment, just in case she tries to flip the script. I nodded. I had already ordered the cameras. There was one hidden in the bookshelf, one in the entryway smoke detector, one on the dash of my car. It felt ridiculous at first, like I'd become a character in a spy movie I never auditioned for. But then I remembered Ryan, and how fast his life had collapsed. I wasn't going to be collateral. By the second week of planning, something inside me began to shift. Not just the numbness that had arrived long ago. No, this was something sharper, cleaner. A sense of control I hadn't felt in months. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to her. I was leading, and she had no idea. She was still living in the same story, the one where she got to pull the strings and direct the ending. She still thought she was ahead. That's what made every dinner, every lazy Sunday morning, every kiss on the cheek feel like a loaded G*N in my hand. I didn't flinch when she smiled. I didn't blink when she laughed at something Carson texted her under the table. Because I knew, and soon she would too. The final piece fell into place when I spoke to Calloway about timing. "How long do you want to wait?" he asked. "You could file now or wait until she makes the first move." "I want to expose her on my terms," I said. "Publicly." Calloway raised an eyebrow. "Reputation matters to her?" "It's everything." He gave a slow nod, as if weighing the ethics against the efficiency. "Then I'll make sure the delivery is memorable." Lindsay had been planning an engagement celebration. She floated the idea weeks ago, and I had nodded, smiled, even offered to help with the guest list. "We'll keep it small," she said. "Just family, a few close friends. Nothing fancy." But the more we talked about it, the bigger it became. She reserved a venue. She hired a photographer. She bought a dress that arrived in a box I pretended not to notice. She even designed little invitation cards with our initials embossed in gold. M+L. Forever. I looked at one for a long time, fingers tracing the letters. And that's when I knew this party, her performance, would be the perfect place to end it. Publicly, quietly, thoroughly. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't even going to accuse. I was just going to let the truth speak. And I would watch her world fold in on itself. Not out of revenge, but because it was time. Time for her to understand what it felt like to lose something you never thought would leave you. Time for her to know what it means to be outmaneuvered by someone you thought you had wrapped around your finger. Time for the curtain to fall. At the engagement party, Lindsay beamed, surrounded by friends and family, playing her part flawlessly. When it was time for speeches, I stood up, thanked everyone, then calmly revealed everything. Photos, texts, the second phone. Gasps followed. Her smile shattered. Guests stared in stunned silence as she stumbled for words. The perfect illusion collapsed in seconds. She didn't cry. She fled. And just like that, her story fell apart in front of everyone she fooled. She texted me days later. A photo of us, captioned, "You ruined everything too soon." But her blame was meaningless. I had already moved. Tennessee. A quiet lakeside town. New job. Clean air. I saw her once in a shopping center, arguing with her brother over money. She didn't see me. I walked right past her, untouched. The past had no grip on me anymore. Not her lies, not her silence. I was free now, and she was just a chapter I'd long since closed.